I sent my son-in-law $40,000 every year for 7 years because I believed my daughter was dead, and grief makes you do obedient things without asking questions. Last Saturday, my granddaughter leaned close while we sat on our usual park bench and whispered, "Grandma, please stop sending him money." I thought she was joking, but she was shaking, and children do not shake like that unless they are afraid. I asked what she meant, and she glanced toward the parking lot like someone might be watching and said, "Just come to the house and look." That was the moment something inside me turned cold, because I suddenly realized in 7 years I had never once actually checked what I was paying for, and I started to wonder if my daughter was really gone or if I had buried a lie instead. I did not drive home after she said that because my hands were too tight on the steering wheel and my chest felt like it does when bad news is coming but has not arrived yet. So I sat outside his house watching the front door and telling myself I was being foolish and dramatic and old, the kind of woman who invents storms out of silence. But then the door opened and he stepped out talking on his phone, and he did not see me parked across the street. He was laughing, not polite laughing, but real laughing, head tilted back like a man without a single worry in his life. And something about that laugh slid under my skin because I could not remember the last time I heard that sound from someone raising a child who lost her mother. I watched him walk to his car, still talking and smiling, and I noticed he never once looked back toward the house, never checked a window, never did the small absent things parents do when part of their mind stays with their child. And that was when I felt it, that slow, quiet feeling that starts in the stomach and spreads outward, the feeling that something is wrong but has been wrong for a long time, and you are only just now catching up to it. I thought about the money then. Every January, like clockwork, the bank teller already recognizing me, the transfer slips, the way he always texted thanks and nothing else. No photos, no school reports, no stories about her losing a tooth or learning a word or falling off a bike. I had told myself he was private. I had told myself grief makes people quiet. I had told myself many things because believing them was easier than asking. Across the street, his car pulled away, and I could see through the front window of the house into the dining room where my granddaughter sat alone at the table, swinging her legs too fast the way nervous children do. No television on, no music, just her and a glass of milk, and a silence so thick I could almost hear it from where I was parked. I realized then that in 7 years I had accepted every version of the story I had been given because I was tired and sad and wanted the world to make sense again. But sitting there, watching that child alone in that too quiet house, I understood something mothers do not like to admit. Sometimes the worst lies are the ones we cooperate with. I started the engine and told myself I would come back tomorrow and the next day and however many days it took until I saw what she wanted me to see, because whatever was happening inside that house had already reached the point where a little girl was whispering warnings in public parks, and children do not do that unless they think no one will believe them. If you want to know what I saw when I finally went inside, make sure you like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. The next afternoon, I came back earlier than usual and parked farther down the street where my car would not be easy to notice. I told myself I was only being careful, but the truth was I felt like I was doing something wrong, even though I did not yet know what that something was. The house looked the same as always, white siding, well-kept lawn, curtains half drawn. Nothing about it suggested danger or secrets or lies, and that almost made it worse, because ordinary houses are the best hiding places for things no one wants seen. I watched the front window, and after a few minutes I saw my granddaughter walk into view carrying a plate, and for a second, relief washed over me because it meant she was eating and safe and alive, and maybe I had imagined everything. Then a woman stepped into frame behind her, not a visitor, not a neighbor, but comfortable, moving like she belonged there. She took the plate from my granddaughter without saying a word and set it on the table, then pointed toward the hallway, and my granddaughter lowered her head and walked out of sight. Something inside me tightened hard enough to hurt because I knew that posture. I had seen it before in children who had learned that speaking caused trouble. The woman sat down at the table and started eating from the plate meant for the child, calm, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, and I almost got out of the car right then, but I stayed because I needed to understand, not react. A few minutes later, the front door opened, and my son-in-law walked in, still scrolling on his phone, and he kissed the woman on the head as he passed her. Not quick, not secret, not guilty. Normal, practiced, routine. My fingers went numb on the steering wheel because no one had told me about a woman living there. No one had said my granddaughter was sharing her home with a stranger. No one had thought I deserved to know where my money was really going or who was really raising her. And suddenly, every year I had sent that check replayed in my mind like a row of doors slamming shut. I thought about my granddaughter whispering at the park, and I understood that she had not been asking for help in that moment. She had been gathering courage. I stepped out of the car before I could talk myself out of it and walked toward the house, slowly, steadily, the way you walk when you already sense your life is about to divide into before and after. And if you want to see what happened the second I knocked on that door, make sure you like and subscribe so you can hear the rest of this story. I knocked once and heard movement inside, then silence, then footsteps approaching slow and careful, and when the door opened, it was not my son-in-law standing there, but the woman I had seen through the window. And up close, she looked younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, maybe less, with calm eyes that did not show surprise or guilt or even curiosity, just mild annoyance, like I was a delivery she had not ordered. She said yes, and I asked where he was, and she said not home yet, in a tone that suggested I should already know that. I told her I would wait and stepped forward before she could answer because something in me had shifted from polite to certain, and she moved aside without arguing, which scared me more than if she had tried to stop me. The house smelled different than I remembered. Not dirty, not clean, just unfamiliar, like walking into a hotel room that looks tidy but feels wrong. My granddaughter stood at the end of the hallway watching me with wide eyes, and I smiled so she would know she was safe. Then I asked the woman who she was, and she said she lived there and asked who I was. And when I told her I was the grandmother, she blinked once slowly and said, "Oh, you are the one who sends the money." Not thank you, not nice to meet you, just that. The words landed heavy and cold, and I felt something inside my chest lock into place because that sentence told me more truth than anyone had given me in 7 years. I asked where my granddaughter slept, and she pointed to a small room off the kitchen, and when I looked inside, I saw a narrow bed, a plastic lamp, a pile of folded clothes, and nothing else. No toys, no books, no drawings on the wall, no sign a child actually lived there. Behind me, I heard the front door open and his voice saying he was home, and the moment his eyes met mine, his face drained of color so fast it was like watching a light switch flip. He said my name quietly, like he had seen a ghost, and I realized in that instant he was not shocked to see me because I was unexpected. He was shocked because I was not supposed to see this. The silence stretched, and my granddaughter stepped closer until her hand touched mine, and I felt how small her fingers were and how tight she was holding on, and I understood that whatever lie had been living in this house was about to break open whether he wanted it to or not. If you want to hear what he said when I asked him the question he never thought I would ask, make sure you like and subscribe so you do not miss the final part.
I asked him where my daughter was, and I watched the exact moment his mind stopped working, because men who rehearse lies always prepare for the questions they expect and never for the one they fear. He stared at me like I had spoken another language and said, "What do you mean?" And I said her name slowly and clearly, and his eyes flicked toward the woman, then toward the hallway, then back to me. And that was all the answer I needed, because truth does not need directions, but lies always look for exits. My granddaughter's grip tightened and I felt her shaking, and I said, "I'm only going to ask you once more before I call the police and report a fraud investigation about every dollar I have sent you for 7 years. Where is my daughter?" The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming and somewhere outside a dog barking, and he pressed his lips together like he was holding something inside his mouth that might spill out if he relaxed. The woman shifted her weight, annoyed now, not nervous, and said, "She told you she was dead, didn't she?" And he snapped her name sharp, like a warning, but it was too late because the sentence had already landed. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, and I stepped closer and said, "You identified the body. You signed the papers. You watched me bury ashes." And he whispered, "I can explain," which is what people say when the truth is worse than the lie. I shook my head and said, "No, you can start with where she is." His shoulders dropped then, like strings had been cut, and he dragged a hand down his face and said, "She left." Just like that. Left. Like a person misplacing keys, not a wife disappearing from the world. He said she ran off with someone and did not want the baby and did not want us, and told him to tell everyone she died so no one would look for her. And he thought it was better that way. And I stood there trying to understand how a man decides a living woman is more convenient as a memory. My knees felt weak, but I stayed standing because my granddaughter was still holding my hand, and I knew if I fell, she would think truth is something that knocks you down. I asked if she was alive now, and he nodded once, and that single movement split my life into 2 clean halves, before and after. Before, I was a grieving mother honoring ashes on a mantle, and after, I was a mother whose child was somewhere breathing under the same sky without me. I squeezed my granddaughter's hand and said, "We are leaving," and he did not try to stop us because men who build their lives on lies rarely know how to fight when the truth finally walks in the door. And if this story kept me with you until the very last word, make sure you like and subscribe, because sometimes the truth does not come looking for you. Sometimes it waits for you to be brave enough to knock.